I said yesterday, I'll say it again today. One of the great things about doing these online events is we have had so many new people join the cause. I love seeing everybody in person. I always love our United Methodist Women's Legislative event where hundreds of United Methodist women come together. I loved this event last year when we had people of faith from throughout the state come to Austin for 3 days. And so I look forward to seeing you all again in person soon. But doing it online has allowed us to reach even more people. And one of the things we found as people register is that we have a lot of people who are new to Texas Impact. And so we wanted to spend the 4 o'clock hour each day during this event talking about Texas Impact, why people participate, why it's important, how you can get involved. And so we thought the best people to help us do that would be people who volunteer time out of their busy lives to do the work of Texas Impact as board members. And so yesterday we had, don't make me forget, we had Cynthia Reeves, we had Ellen Sable, and we had Paul Klitsky join us for the conversation. And today we have 4 more board members joining us. We have with us Rick Ertl. Hey, Rick.
Hello.
We have with us Darlene Alfred. Hey, Darlene.
Good afternoon.
We have with us Phil Dickey. Hey, Phil.
Hello, good afternoon.
And we have with us Whit Bodman. Whit, thanks for joining us last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to spend the next portion of an hour giving them a chance to talk about Texas Impact. And y'all, I'll just do our housekeeping on air. Yesterday, I asked each individual board member in order to answer each question. We'll make it a little more conversational today if we can pull it off, and I'm not going to necessarily call on y'all, so I'll trust that somebody can jump in. But the first question I have for y'all is, and we won't judge you for this. B's not on here like checking marks or giving you grades or anything. But first, introduce yourself. Tell us how you come to Texas Impact, what role you're filling on the board, and how you would describe Texas Impact to your people. And since y'all are quiet, I'll go ahead and have our board president, Rick, kick us off.
Well, thank you. My name, again, is Rick Ertl. I live out in Mountain Home, Texas, in the Texas Hill Country. And I was very involved and still am involved in the Southwestern Texas Synod of the Lutheran Church of America. And I'm on a Poverty and Justice Task Force. We've been on this task force since 2009. And our synod encouraged us to get more and more involved in Texas Impact to do advocacy work on behalf of that task force. So in about 2014 or 2015, we followed the United Methodist Women and set up a legislative event that really followed exactly what they had done. And about 2 years ago, we expanded that to be a Lutheran and Episcopal legislative event. And then last year, we expanded it to be the interfaith advocacy event that we're having today. So it sort of started just as our work on a task force in our synod, and it really has expanded to involve more people. And I'm very excited that it now is a Zoom event because, as Scott said, I think we're attracting a wider audience, an audience from more people around the state, and we're able to have people who would not necessarily be able to travel to Austin for a full 3-day event who are benefiting from all of the speakers and events that you're doing online. So that was my experience.
Scott, I'll go next. I'm Darlene Alfred, and I am representing the Central Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church. And I came to Texas Impact via the United Methodist Women's Legislative event. And I attended for several years just as a member, then as social action coordinator for the district and the conference. And we got to talking about ways that the church could participate. And B had mentioned that the various judicatories had representatives on Texas Impact. And at the time, the Central Texas Conference did not. So I went to the Central Texas Conference. I went to the leaders there, the center director, and I said, I've been informed that our conference does not have a representative on the Texas Impact Board. And I was wondering if we could get someone there so that we could be represented, so our voice could be heard. And the person said, hey, no problem, great idea. We used to have someone on the board representing us. You're absolutely right. I'm going to send the email to them today and let them know that you will be our representative on the board for the Texas Impact. And I said, not quite what I was thinking about. However, it was okay, and it was great for me because I've learned that Texas Impact allows you to not only use your voice, but shows you the best way to use your voice. And so that's what people should kind of take away from that. We all have a voice and we need to know how to use it. And Texas Impact allows us, trains us, gives us the resources to use our voice in the context that's needed. So I would recommend the activity and the involvement in Texas Impact to anyone in any denomination, any race, any creed, any age. There's a place for you.
I'll go ahead and jump in. My name's Whit Bodman. I just retired from teaching comparative religion at Austin Presbyterian Seminary. I got involved in Texas Impact because I was assigned to. When I came on the faculty, faculty had a representative to Texas Impact, and I filled in that slot. And so that was 18 years ago, 19 years ago, almost. And I've been involved ever since. My involvement is primarily because of the idea of Texas Impact. I'm not a real policy wonk. There are things that particularly that concern me, but I'm not one that follows the warp and weft of the Texas legislature. But I am interested in the very philosophy and theology that leads Texas Impact to do what it does, which is very different or significantly different from the way so many other religiously informed or based organizations engage with public policy. And that's what really interests me. Also, because I teach comparative religion, the interfaith aspect is particularly important to me.
So from a 19-year veteran to one of our newer board members, Phil, what do you think?
So similar to Whit, I actually was appointed to be on this. I started at White Rock United Methodist in July of last year and was told by our senior pastor that one of the things that I would do with my job description would be on the board of Texas Impact, which I was thrilled about because one of the reasons I was moving to White Rock, one of the things that we wanted to work on was how do we really engage church and society as a congregation. And so I had done some work with the General Board of Church and Society, actually with Christian Watkins, who will be joining us later tonight. And being in DC and doing some kind of federal national work stuff, and been really involved in an organization here in Dallas as well, Faith Forward Dallas, that does a lot of stuff locally. And so this was kind of in between, needing a connection to the Texas level. And so I was thrilled to join the board. The first board retreat was like eyes wide open the entire time, kind of drinking from a fire hose kind of deal. There's just a lot that goes on with Texas Impact that I had no idea. And so when I think of Texas Impact beforehand, I kind of thought like, oh yeah, they're a group that does a lot of work at the Capitol in Austin and advocates for various things. And I think I'd been down in Austin advocating against the bathroom bill back in the day. And now I'm realizing how much Texas Impact actually does, and advocacy is really what they're about, but it's really empowering people, both lay and clergy, to do the work of advocacy. So I like to think of Texas Impact, especially the staff, doing the homework and then sharing the answers with us so that we get to go and cheat off of all the background work that they've done and all the homework that they've done for us. So it's really an empowering aspect for both clergy and lay to go forth and advocate for legislative aspects.
I'm going to have to talk to your senior pastor, Mitchell, about that and get some of the background, but we are glad that you are with us. Also going to welcome to the conversation another board member, Alex Lee Cornell. Alex, you want to say a word about kind of who you are, how you come from Texas Impact, and how you would describe it to your friends?
Sure. Sorry I was late. My name is Alex Lee Cornell. I am a Presbyterian pastor in Dallas, and I was a student at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and I learned about Texas Impact because there was this class that Whit was teaching with B about faith and public policy that I could take in lieu of a senior preaching class. And maybe that was a good thing, maybe that was a bad thing. You'll have to ask the people that have to listen to me preach on Sunday mornings. But I have always seen the Christian gospel as one that drives us to be involved for the salvation of the world, not just in a spiritual sense, but also in a sort of holistic sense, in a social, political, economic sense. And I always describe Texas Impact to folks as helping faith communities take that extra step, moving from doing charity work to doing justice work, or not just pulling bodies out of the river, but looking upstream to analyze the systems that are causing them to get thrown in the first place, so to speak.
Thanks, Alex. So a couple of y'all talked about the idea that you're not professional policy lobbyists, right? That this isn't something that you're doing every day, but all of you are intimately involved in your faith tradition, either at the congregational level or seminary level. So I wonder why, from your and I guess I'll also say that's one of the things that I love most about this organization is the fact that we have leaders from so many different faith backgrounds who come together at a retreat every other year and come up with a consensus legislative agenda that allows us to speak on behalf of faith voices throughout Texas. And so it's a beautiful process and makes me proud to work for this organization. But I wonder why, from your perspective, you think it's important to have a statewide advocacy organization specifically representing the views of your faith tradition.
Well, I guess I can go first again. I think it's important for our faith tradition to have a way of sharing its view on social justice with policymakers. They need to have access. And in fact, the Texas Impact is the state public policy office for all three of the ELCA synods in Texas. And I think that's an important role that Texas Impact plays for the Lutheran Church here.
As a Christian, I'd love to jump in and say that one reason why I think it's important is because, especially, not just on the national level, but on the statewide level as well. We have seen this kind of toxic Christian nationalism that has really come to the fore, that is a very different understanding of the church's role in government and the government's role in sort of moral life than my tradition teaches. And I think it is incredibly important at this day and age where we're sort of seeing the flag wrapped around the cross, so to speak, for there to be mainstream people of faith having a voice in political affairs.
The way I think about it, what Texas Impact does that is different from other organizations is that we operate on the philosophy that we are a part of government. So we take this idea of government of the people and by the people very seriously. There are many other organizations that take their model as the prophets. And the prophets generally speak from outside and speak at. We speak in. We speak as we get involved. We meet with legislators. We see ourselves and the members of religious communities that we involve as part of the process of shaping policy So in a sense, we are a part of the legislature. We are a part, certainly, of the legislative process. And that's a significantly different philosophy. One member of the board and a frequent speaker at our meetings, and also a former seminary student, is Beeman Floyd. And one of the things that he says, and B also echoes this, that is so different from what you hear everywhere else, is he says every legislator there wants the best for the state of Texas. Their idea of what the best may be is a bit different, but they're not corrupt. Well, maybe one or two, but they're not jerks. They're not people in it for the money, certainly. They really have a vision for the state. And so we ought to treat them as people who, with us, want the best for the state. And we've got to figure out together what it is. The other thing, second of three things, is that he said every legislator is an ally on something. And it may be not the big issues, but it may be the most conservative legislator and the most liberal one get together on an anti-bullying bill, which raises the third thing, which is we tend to think of the big issues. And the big issues are certainly important. And our legislative agenda, the one our guide for tomorrow, those are on big issues. But for the kid who's getting bullied in school, an anti-bullying law is salvific, is really important, more important than climate change or election policy. And so we ought to remember that some of these little bills that most people will think are entirely unimportant, they're really important to someone. And those 3 points really undergird what I think makes Texas Impact special, is that those inform how we participate in ways that they don't in a whole lot of other good and worthy and important advocacy organizations.
Thanks, Whit. He will reveal to everybody who the 1 or 2 representatives are that are corrupt in our super secret membership meeting this evening afterwards. I'm just kidding. There is no super secret meeting tonight. Same question to it looks like Phil just unmuted himself. So why is it important to have an organization like Texas Impact, or statewide organization that represents your faith values?
I think in some sense there's power in numbers, and where we as a congregation can do a whole lot, but we as a collective can do a whole lot more. And as United Methodists, John Wesley had this idea that the gospel of Christ knows no religion but social, and there's no holiness but social holiness. And so while we want to focus on what we do within the individual and how we operate as a congregation, we also recognize there's a whole bigger, kind of what Alex was saying, right? There's a lot that we can do in charity and mercy work, but there's a lot that has to happen in justice work to ensure that at some point we start making progress as a society. And so having this statewide aspect, I think, is just crucially important for us, not only as a denomination and who we are as United Methodists, but then part of who we are is reaching out to other, being ecumenical and interfaith as well. And so having an organization that pulls all those together to advocate at the state level is just vital for us having a much bigger footprint in the seat of justice.
I'm having audio problems. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to piggyback on something Phil said, because I too am of the United Methodist Church denomination. For me, I also serve as the conference lay leader for our conference. And in our conference, unlike many conferences, our lay leader becomes a part of the cabinet. And over the years, I have been local or district lay leaders where there was the voice of the lay people was being heard. As the lay leader for the conference, there's an opportunity to make sure that there's a lay person in the room so all aspects are heard as decisions are made. When it comes to a statewide organization, it is something to where, for me, that as Phil alluded to, your voice it's if I say something, if I sing a song and it's just me, but if we all start singing that song together, the song becomes louder, it becomes more prominent. And so it gives you that voice. And the one thing that all the different faiths have in common that Texas Impact allows us to do is to come together on those things. I would say, as a board member, there's going to be things like in any organization we may not all agree on, but we all agree on it's always right to do right. We all agree on I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. We all believe in that. And this gives us an opportunity to bring that together and have that louder voice and be profound in the state, not just in our small pocket. You hear people talk about a big fish in a little pond or a little fish in a big pond. This gives us an opportunity for that strength in numbers. And that's why a statewide organization is always a good resource to have. And Texas Impact is the best one that I know of. And that's my speech.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. I'll also add, between yesterday's panel and today's panel, we've had 6 different faith traditions or denominations represented. We'll add some more tomorrow. So certainly there's power in being a statewide organization. I think there's strength in having different traditions come together, but also we have to remember that in each one of our traditions, most of them have congregations or members throughout the state, right? And there's been so many times where we've needed to contact somebody in a particular legislative district. And so, I might call Darlene and say, hey, any United Methodists in, Beaumont, or call Rick and say, hey, any Lutherans in Tyler, and so, and board members and people always come through because you can use your connections through your traditions throughout the state. So I think there's value in that as well. For this next question, I almost phrased it as, I don't want this to be a Texas Impact commercial the entire time, but I guess that is what this session is framed to be, is Texas Impact information. But you all come to this work motivated by something, right? You didn't just decide you were going to participate in Texas Impact or this advocacy work from a faith perspective because you just love public policy, right? There's something that motivated you to do that work. So I wonder if you can each share just quickly what issue most motivates you to do this work.
I guess
You
I'll
only
go.
get one?
I mean, you're a board member. I'm not going to cut you off. So if you've got one, go for it. But which one or ones?
Well, see, that's the beauty. That's the beauty in anything that Texas Impact allows us to do. I started with a great passion for domestic violence awareness, and I had a great passion for the immigration policy, and we had a great passion through the United Methodist Women of what was happening with the payday loans. And we had these group of women, and let's say it was 12 women, we had 6 different things that we were passionate about. We were able to bring all that to Texas Impact to find out that we weren't the only ones with those passions, and it allowed us again to have a louder voice. There's not I'm going to say it's not a one thing for me. For me, it's the ability, again, to speak for those who can't, to stand up for those who can't, or better yet, stand up for those who won't. Because people assume if you don't do something, it's because you can't. And they don't understand that there may be actions that you may take that may affect the rest of your life. Example, through the domestic violence workshop, we had a program called In Her Shoes. And the first thing that someone would say when a woman was involved in something like that was, why didn't she leave? And then the next question is, leave and go where? Where's she going to go? Are you going to help her get there? Can she come stay with you? And so this gave us an opportunity to think about the what ifs. Texas Impact gives us the opportunity, and it gave me the opportunity to work on more than one thing. There was multiple injustices that I see, and I only have so many hours in the day. Occasionally I need to sleep. It gave me the ability to work on all those things because it was a collective. And the one thing, no matter what's happening in the United Methodist Church, the strongest thing that we have going for us is our connection. And that's what Texas Impact does for me in that realm.
I'm glad I allowed you to say more than one, because that'll preach.
Let me go ahead. For me, the interfaith aspect has been really important, and occasionally that comes to specific legislation on Sharia law or religious freedom for different faiths to practice. And I like the law, and I find the intricacies really interesting. But this isn't really an issue, but I think it is. The trainings that we have done with other communities, one of the most exciting events was the first time we did a legislative training with a Muslim community at a mosque. And that was thrilling. It was the first time that they had really wrestled with the question, not what do we want to say, but how can we say it effectively?
I think mine's rooted somewhat just in my theology of focusing on every person has value because everybody's made in the image and likeness of God. And so I know that's not one specific issue, but that's kind of the philosophy that underlies, kind of like what Darlene was saying, all the issues that rise up. And so if that means focusing at some point on the economic inequities that take place that then lead to, shelter insecurities and food insecurities and then immigration, issues that take place there, I think it's all rooted for me in this idea of valuing every human life and figuring out then how do we, I hate to say just practically, because sometimes you got to push beyond practicality. If we don't have idealists every once in a while, right? No one will push us far enough. But do it in a way that actually leads to some greater change and some progress to make sure that we're caring for not just my family, right? Because my kids get to go to a school that has, doesn't have isn't lacking, right? But if I lived in a school that there was lacking, I know I'd be advocating way harder for that school. And so what's preventing me from advocating from that school now, recognizing that those kids have the same needs my kids have. So just recognizing that we have to do everything we can as a community of faith and to hold the legislators accountable to make sure that we're not taking advantage of, and we're thinking of those who don't have the same opportunities that we may have, and how can we advocate for them.
I would say for me, as a Presbyterian, coming from the Reformed tradition, the Bible is central. The Bible as the Word of God, and so for me, the issue is poverty. I mean, if you took out all of the verses in the Bible that spoke about caring for the poor, you would have a very, very, very small Bible. And I think so. It's that issue. Plus, it's the issue of doing, and because you have people that say, well, that is what churches, that is what these private groups are for, and so it's also the notion of doing it on the public level. So on a practical policy level, I think public education and I think Medicaid expansion are two sort of policy issues that speak to that. But that this issue, this idea that we are the people for which and by which the government exists, and so when we participate in our government, we bring the values of our religious traditions and of our faith, and that is at least central to our religious tradition, and we see that concern for the poor and for the least of these across other faith traditions as well, and so it seems like the government is the place for all the people where we can do more together than we could do sort of privately or separately.
In my early involvement with Texas Impact, I worked a lot on payday lending. I went around our synod and did presentations on it. It really resonated with a lot of people. And in fact, I have a Poverty and Justice Bible that highlights all the passages in the the Bible about that, and people were amazed at how much they were being told that they should probably be working on that they weren't doing. But I think underlying that issue and all others is really the justice question: what's fair and what should we be doing to try to promote fairness? So it really applies across the board to a lot of different issues that Texas Impact deals with.
So the wonders of 2020 and 2021 continue. We've all experienced this in Zoom before, but my neighbor's car alarm is going off and my dogs are barking. So I'm going to try to keep talking so that you can't hear over any of that, and then I'll mute myself soon. So all of you have many hats that you wear and have worn, and I think Darlene mentioned being stretched super thin with the things that she does, and I know that in talking to board members, right? You are busy humans, and so you have to make a commitment to spend your time serving in this capacity. And I wonder why you choose to spend your time doing this work as opposed to some of the other options that you might have.
I'll jump in and say, one of the things again that I like about Texas Impact and that drove me to do this work is something that I remember Bea saying one of the first times that she talked about Texas Impact, which is that part of kind of our witness as people of faith isn't just the policy nuts and bolts or the what that we are advocating for, but the how that we are advocating for. Like Whit was saying, with this sense of, talking amongst friends and amongst families, treating legislators, everybody, everybody who is involved in the process of children and God, not just coming in from the outside with kind of prophetic, condemnation and fire and brimstone, but showing sort of, the Imago Dei, person to person, human engagement. And I think, so much of our time is spent on Facebook and on social media. And so I think, especially during the pandemic, and so I think staying involved with an organization like Texas Impact in that sense is almost like a spiritual discipline in terms of keeping you grounded in what can be sort of best and hopeful about engaging in these questions that we're all sort of griping about or talking about in other spheres that aren't as kind of intentional and healthy.
So I'll go next because for me, it's if anyone who knows me, for those who know me, and if you've tolerated me, I thank you for that. I thank you for the grace that you've shown me. I am one of those people that if I see something, I delivered a message at I forget which church it was a few months ago, and we talked about the many things that happened, and we talked about 9/11, and one of the, if there was such a thing, one positive thing that came out of 9/11 was after that, they had this big campaign that said, if you see something, say something. And that was geared towards the New Yorkers because they never see or hear anything. I apologize for any of you who are New Yorkers. But it was, if you see something, say something. And I believe that's a policy as Christians, as people of God, we should always do. If we see that it's wrong, we should call it out. I believe that faith is an action word. And because of that, Texas Impact gives me the ability to maintain my faith and take action and do it with others. We may have different religious beliefs, but we all believe that something needs to be done. And we all believe that something is wrong. We should stand up for it. So for me, it's just that simple. Faith is an action word, and it gives me the ability to put my faith, my beliefs and injustice and inequalities into action. And I get to do it with thousands and thousands of you around the state of Texas.
And I'll piggyback on that too. Just that I think what I found with Texas Impact is it gives me language to do that, right? The barrier that I often felt before was I feel like I'm going to be made stupid if I go try to talk to my elected officials because I don't know what I'm supposed to say or have the right verbiage or really how to effectively communicate. And so I feel like what Texas Impact has done for me, and then helped me to do then as a pastor in the faith community, then is to help them as well communicate the things that we really are passionate about to our elected officials in a way that makes sense to them, and not just like we're flapping gums all over the place, right? That it actually makes sense to them, and is a language that they're familiar with, and that we're knowledgeable about what's really taking place, so that we're not saying things that are relevant either. So it gives us a really great opportunity to amplify voices. I love what, Alex talked about social media. Like, I love the fact that I can go on to Texas Impact whenever I want to advocate for something, and they have a post or have, some kind of information that I can then turn into a very easy social media post that then can get shared by a bunch of my friends, my congregants, whatever. And that, again, it's amplifying voices that goes much farther than me just, shouting into the echo chamber void of a lot of social media, So I put my time here and I serve in this capacity because I think that it's exponential, and it really helps to put language around the things that I'm passionate about and our congregation is passionate about.
I would say because I haven't figured out a way to escape. Once you get involved, as I have, then it's just a wonderful group of people who are passionate about what they do and knowledgeable about what they do. And once I started hanging around B and Josh and Scott and Darlene and Alex, and Alex I knew in seminary, he didn't count. And all these others, it's just inescapable that you have to be involved in this because it's so important. And it's effective, and it's this wonderful combination of knowledge and wisdom and statecraft and passion and fidelity to our faith traditions that I want to be around. And I think that for me, my faith is a collective faith. It's not just individuals, not just what I want. It's what the community wants. And so this is in itself a church, an interfaith community, but I treat it as a worshiping, thinking community. And so I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, except die or move.
Well, my motivation comes from the mandate in Micah to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. I'm not a trained theologian. I'm a corporate lawyer, but I think Texas Impact, with all of the religious leaders in the organization, provides us with a theological support from many different faith traditions to really deal with injustices in the system. And as a lawyer, I seem to see them every day. So our work never ends. There's always more to do. And I'm excited that Texas Impact seems to be growing its footprint, because the more folks that we can enlist to help us in this work, the more of an impact we can have at the state level. So I encourage us to continue.
So thank you all. I'm going to ask one more round of questions, and then hopefully give folks a few minutes to take a break before the next panel, which I'm super excited about. And I might be about to make you all unpopular because I'm going to ask you about homework. So one of the things that I say often is Texas Impact isn't around to give you content to help you think about things, right? The goal of this conference is not for you to consume information. It's for you to have the tools to go do something. So what do you hope folks will do when they leave here after this event?
Tweet.
All right. Why do you say that?
Because that's one of the things that has come out of this, is the importance of tweeting, that's where you get information. And I hate tweeting, but I do it because I have learned that it is one of the tools, one of the one of the tools in the big toolbox that is useful for engaging in the public domain. And so I, from time to time, and probably after this, will pull up my Twitter account and inform various legislators of things to do, and I will learn from people. And so it's a particular tool, one of many, and so I hope people will tweet respectfully from information, but politicians pay attention to it, and you get good and immediate, timely information that way.
And I will attest. I have seen Dr. Bodman on Twitter, and it always makes me smile when I see him tweeting at his elected officials. I also remember there's a person who ran for office, I don't remember, I won't name them, who said if you're not posting about it on social media, it didn't happen, right? So that is a way to let your friends know that you are engaged in these issues and encourage them to do the same. I think I saw Alex raise his hand. Go for it.
Well, I just felt like it was important to kind of follow that with the other theme that Whit and I have been talking about is, tweet, and then also go from here thinking of your legislator or representative, especially that one who, I don't know, I haven't seen Whit's list of the corrupt ones, but you feel like might be on that corrupt list, or at least is somebody that you just vehemently disagree with, like cannot understand at all, and try to imagine that they are actually doing the best that they can. I just think that is a huge part of what Texas Impact is about. And as always, I'm preaching to myself because it is so hard these days. But I really do feel strongly that our sort of, the kind of fabric of our public engagement depends on it.
And let me say, because I made the joke about Whit's comment earlier about he said there were one or two who might be in it for the wrong reasons. His point was good, right? That these elected officials all get in there to do the right thing, right? And so it's our responsibility as people of faith to help them understand our community, right? And to help them know the needs of our community. And so I did want to make sure everybody understood my point from earlier. Any other homework assignments for today?
I do need to mention that I don't know who those one or two
right.
So you'll have to ask Beeman Floyd.
Yes, and one way to know for yourself is to meet with your legislator.
What I would say, we'll talk about the homework. I'm using my theme for 2021 because 2020 was a blur for some of the local United Methodist women, and my theme for them this year as a member of the jurisdiction team is to be creative, to be flexible, and have a spirit of collaboration. So I would hope those who are participating will see that they're not by themselves, that they can get together with someone who lives across the street or across town or in another city within the state that they know, and they can all get together and collaborate and find out where there are similarities or differences between their needs, their wants, and maybe their beliefs, but something where they can find common ground with their legislators. And that's what I hope will come from this, that they will remember that they're not by themselves. But again, my word for 2021 is collaboration, because that's what we all need to do if we're going to stand up for some of the injustices that we see on a regular basis.
I'd like to follow up on a comment that Myrna made last night. She said, if a bad bill is passed and they have to fight it in court, she needs to have a record that the legislators knew about the problem. And so I would encourage people to file comments with the various House and Senate committees when they're having hearings on their bills. There's a deadline time-wise to file that, but if there's something that should be in the public record to support them in litigation subsequently, I think we should try to do that.
I would
I
like
think-
to add something.
Go ahead.
I am a member of the board because I was elected to represent the Central Texas Conference of the United Methodist Women. But you don't have to be representing an organization to be a member of Texas Impact. You can be a member of a group. You can be just a lone person, just yourself, because there is strength in numbers. But you can always be a member of Texas Impact, and that will bring you more than just saying I'm a member of this. It will provide you with access to resources. It'll provide you with access to those in your area that you may not have known, that maybe the lady across the street from you or the neighbor that you know, his dog bothers you. You may find out that you two have a lot in common, and you can come to that common ground with Texas Impact. So on their website, texasimpact.org, it gives you the access to membership. There's many things, again, that you'll get from it. You'll get access to information. There's even a cool t-shirt that you might get. And so who doesn't need another t-shirt, right? Because who doesn't?
I think sorry, Scott, my homework, I guess, would just be along Whit's idea of tweet. I think one of the best things I found is actually work to build that relationship with your elected officials. And so I've found that my senator isn't real active on Twitter. He's a little bit, but he doesn't respond when I do tweet. But what I have found is that my representative is very active on Instagram and actually will respond whenever I reach out on Instagram. And so now we've been like DMing back and forth, whether it's her or one of her staff members. And so it's sorry about relationships.
Phil, we all hear you. We've all been there. I have on this hour. Anybody else have anything to add before we close it out? Did I miss anybody? Well, yeah, I really do. And I see Joe is in the chat. Joe, maybe you can provide that link for the membership that Darlene talked about, so folks can have that information. And as the engagement director, momentarily in the chat, I'm going to give you all some homework assignments that we highlighted during my session yesterday, where we talked about the rapid response team and the legislative engagement groups. So we hope that you'll do all of those things. But I hope this conversation was helpful for you all. I always love hearing from our board members, hear how they describe Texas Impact and why they have committed this time to the organization. So Rick, Whit, Darlene, Phil, Alex, thank you all so much for the work that you do on behalf of the organization, but also with all of the hats that you wear. This is a special organization because of people like you. And I hope that everybody who's listening will look for some opportunities over the weeks and months to come to engage yourself, to engage your congregation, and to do this work to help transform Texas. You can always reach out to me if you have questions about how to do that. My email address is scott@texasimpact.org, or the staff will be hanging out in the chat for the rest of this event. So just let us know how we can support the work of you and your congregation. So thank you all again. Appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon.